All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Really appreciate you carving out a bit of your schedule to hear this awesome content. But before we get started, just want to run over some quick housekeeping. So, first is a thank you to Dell Technologies for delivering this content. This is going to be fantastic. Second is please note that this webinar is being recorded. And if you have a question, please use the chat or the Q&A section. We do have people on to answer your question as quickly as possible so you can get all of your questions answered in today's time. And then make sure you update your profile. With the new Elevate website, you have the option to create content and curate content directly that you want to hear and directly for you. So if you go into that update profile section on the website and choose your topics of interest, that will get you emails, blog posts, notifications for that content. And then we want to hear from you. We do have a post-event survey that will pop up on your screen at the end of today's webinar. It will also be included in an email with the recording once today's event is edited and up. So please keep an eye out for that or fill it out once we are done. But you are not here to listen to me speak. You're here for Kenny. So Kenny, without further ado, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you. These are my favorite events, talking to the community, sharing new stuff. That is, it makes my day. And it is into the evening now here in Scotland, but my energy is not waning. I am ready to share lots of cool, interesting stuff. Around two distinct things, we'll say, the Dell Automation Platform and Dell Private Cloud, and we will go through both of those. And I've got some slideware, I've got some demos, I've got something for everyone here. If you've heard a bit about this before, there may be some repeat content. If you've not, it's all new. But even if you've heard some things, promise there are some things that you've never seen before, except maybe Curtis, who's here as my co-host in the chat here. He's going to answer all your questions in Q&A. So please use the Q&A or the chat as we go, and Curtis will get to all your questions as we go. I'm going to start off with a little bit of context setting. And I think the context for every single product that we deliver, every single new thing that we bring to market at Dell always starts with our customers and our partners and what we're hearing as being your challenges, your needs, the things that keep you up at night and you want our help in helping to solve. And over the last year and a half or more, we'll say, there have been three distinct areas that those challenges have fallen into consistently. And consistently for, let's say, almost every customer in every industry, in every country, in every region. This is not some niche thing we're talking about. This is spread far and wide. And right bang smack in the middle there is this private cloud challenge people are having here, where as close to everyone, as makes no odds, are saying that the usage or evaluation of multiple hypervisor options is a strategic imperative. That's a polite way of saying that people are rethinking what virtualization and hypervisor strategy looks like for them there, and no guesses as to why that might be there. And it's not to say that everyone is saying we're going to up sticks and leave VMware there. That is not the case. Many people still love VMware. Most still love VMware. Many don't love Broadcom, but most still love VMware. And there are those who have benefited from the regime change there as well. So it's not all doom and gloom, but for many customers out there, the evaluation of multiple hypervisor options is a strategic imperative, and the ability to have, let's say, enhanced flexibility in strategy moving forward is vital as well. Then, of course, we have the rise of AI, larger in some places than others. It is not necessarily a universally pervasive thing in every country, every region yet, but it is on the rise. And customers are asking, how do I implement this AI thing in a way which brings me immediate business benefit, but also in a way which delivers future business benefit and the flexibility to repurpose this infrastructure as the AI landscape continues to evolve, because this ain't done changing. AI will continue to evolve rapidly and without any respite there, and we need to be able to evolve the infrastructure and how that operates moving forward as well. Then intrinsically tied to that AI piece is also more focus on the edge use cases and OT environments. OT, which has often been traditionally separate from IT environments, but coming more into the fore here in terms of how we can unify management, deployment, and and operations across both OT and IT as we seek to spread both AI and storage workloads across both of these consistently here. And I think, being honest, from a Dell perspective, historically, we would have treated these as three distinct challenges to be solved or three distinct product areas. We'd have thrown one to our AI product group and one to our private cloud group, which would have split off into multiple different product lines there, and another to our edge product group there. And each would have delivered phenomenal products in their own right. But our opportunity here is actually to unify the approach here and unify how we solve these challenges in one cohesive way. And I would say for me, that was the genesis of the Dell Automation Platform journey here, the need to automate across Dell infrastructure to solve for multiple customer challenges. The need to have a cohesive orchestration layer that can span the breadth of our portfolio and not just in, let's say, server or storage or network as we've individually had in the past, but to bring a cohesive platform, portal, and orchestration layer that allows us to build solutions across the gamut of the Dell portfolio here. That was the vision and the goal of the Dell Automation Platform here, which is a big statement. So let's start to break it down and what that actually means in practice. Um, what does the Dell Automation Platform look like at a top layer? Super straightforward. It is a portal that you log into. It is a portal which is the entry point to your Dell infrastructure and your infrastructure observability moving forward as well. A portal that you can log into and perform a number of day-to-day tasks, things like identity management, license and entitlement management, infrastructure inventory management, infrastructure observability, and most importantly, and as is key for every cloud management and orchestration platform on the planet, the ability to view and deploy from a catalog of offers which bring you some form of value there. So a portal you log into where you can do a bunch of tasks, but importantly, select from a catalog of offers and then deploy those offers. And I'm not saying go off and do this right now because I'd love for you to continue focusing on the webinar here just now. But maybe after you can navigate to automation.dell.com/catalog. There's no authentication required for that URL with the slash catalog at the end there. You can start to browse some of the offers, some of the outcomes that Dell is building that you can then choose within the Dell Automation Platform to deploy onto your infrastructure. And some spoiler alerts of some of the things I'm going to talk about in a little bit here. But in order to deploy something from a portal like this, we need to have some sort of orchestration layer. We need to have some brains of the operation, which is able to understand infrastructure as code, which is able to understand the underlying infrastructure, and is able to automatedly and in an orchestrated way deploy this offer, this outcome that we want. And for us, that is what we call the Dell Automation Platform Orchestrator. So the orchestrator is the brains of the operation. It is there to understand declarative infrastructure as code templates, which are designed to deliver an outcome on physical infrastructure or actually non-physical as well, but we can get to that later there as well. Just now focused on the physical. And interestingly, that is not new. The orchestrator here is not some new thing that we are just bringing to market. It has its heritage stretching back 12 years or so at this point, actually. We'll talk through how the heritage of the Dell Automation Platform Orchestrator has fed into where it is now and how it is an enterprise grade robust orchestration tool here. These are the components of the Dell Automation Platform, the portal and the orchestrator, which can deploy things onto your infrastructure. Importantly, all of these elements are available either as a SaaS offering or to deploy on premises, depending on what your need and your preference is, without compromising on the capabilities of the orchestration engine here at all. The same capabilities through SaaS or on-prem, depending on what your need is there. So from a SaaS perspective, that would be from automation.dell.com. You can log into automation.dell.com. That logs you into the Dell Automation Platform portal. Probably most of the people on the call don't have a login yet, just the same as any other cloud platform. You need to sign up first before you get the login. So more details on that perhaps in the Q&A in the chat. But automation.dell.com is the entry point to our SaaS offering there. If SaaS is not for you, and it is not for many of our customers, we have long believed that we are not here to dictate where you deploy your workloads. That includes your management plane here. You can also deploy on premises. And we make the on premises deployment of the automation platform and orchestrator available either as an OVA or as a Helm chart to deploy into your existing Kubernetes infrastructure. So whether you want to deploy as an OVA or into a Kubernetes infrastructure on-prem, that is another choice there to be made. And I think we'll find as I go through this, one of the themes of today is flexibility. So there's flexibility in where you run your management plane here. There's flexibility in what the underlying infrastructure that runs that looks like. And there's a lot more flexibility that we're going to go through as we go on through this session here today. And by the way, I'm going to take the full time, so hold on to your hats. So you choose from the catalog of offers there, and the orchestrator automates and orchestrates the deployment activity to deploy something onto your infrastructure here. And the infrastructure here, the core building blocks of this are Dell Server and Dell Storage, PowerEdge and Dell Storage. Now, from a PowerEdge perspective, historically, you might be used to us giving lovely names to these devices which are designed to deliver specific outcomes. Things like VxRail nodes or XC nodes or AX nodes or MC nodes and specialized nodes which are based on PowerEdge but designed to do a specific thing. This is not the case here. One of the great joys of bringing the automation platform over the top of this is that instead of doing binding of personalities in factory and binding of outcomes in factory, we can do what we can call late binding of operations to infrastructure here and start to bring whatever outcome you want at the time that makes sense to you onto your PowerEdge servers without those needing to be a defined personality from factory, which means that you can then change that at a time that makes sense to you as well, which is another flavor of flexibility there as well. And I said Dell Storage here, and I was being intentionally inclusive when I said Dell Storage rather than narrowing down to a specific storage appliance. And we do have PowerStore listed here if you squint on screen. And I would say that this is first, our offers here are first and best with PowerStore. And we're putting a lot of effort into the automation story of PowerStore specifically. But we're also opening up a wide array of different Dell storage technologies to be used with our different offerings here as well, which I'm definitely going to spend a bit of time covering here as well, because there's another wealth of flexibility that we're enabling through the storage layer that we talk about here. But Dell Server, Dell Storage as the core building blocks. That is your foundation there. Then you've got the Dell Automation Platform and the portal at the top there. But there exists what I would call a value sandwich somewhere between the portal and the orchestrator and the physical infrastructure here. And that is where we as Dell are focused today on bringing some specific, interesting, and exciting functionality. In some cases new, in some cases improved on things that have already been there in the past, but in all cases now unified under a singular platform, which is the Dell Automation Platform. And those three things, those three products, those three offerings that we're bringing to market just now, and where we're laser focused on just now, but not the be all and end all, not the end of the platform, just where we have launched in the last couple of weeks and then in the next few weeks moving forward, is to solve those private cloud, AI, and edge challenges that we spoke about at the start, that we are hearing loud and clear over and over again. These are what we are challenged with just now. So solve those under a singular umbrella with a singular automation platform and singular orchestration engine there on common hardware and standard building blocks here rather than specially personalized or personality driven solutions here. That is the goal. That is the raison d'etre, we'll say, of the Dell Automation Platform here. And I want to touch a little bit on the heritage and the history here, because I think it's easy to look at and say, well, this looks very new. This is a V1 product. This is the first iteration of this, and be a little bit nervous about this. But I'm here to allay those nerves of the V1 rundown here, because while the Dell Automation Platform here is a new name, every single component that we deploy within it, everything that makes up the automation platform, from its orchestration engine through to the underlying offers that we're delivering, all have a heritage stretching back in some cases 1 year, in some cases a dozen years here, starting with the foundation of Cloudify here, a phenomenal cloud management and orchestration engine, which Dell smartly acquired in 2023 and then spent the last 2.5 years incubating and, let's say, digging deep into the Dell DNA here, really integrating it into the wider Dell ecosystem as the native edge orchestrator. So the Cloudify engine became the core engine driving our edge deployments and edge solutions here. And now that it's grown up and incubated over the last 2.5 years or so, and it is ready for prime time to really spread its wings across the wider data center estate here, that becomes the orchestration engine in the Dell Automation Platform there. So a decade plus old engine there now, deeply embedded into Dell and able to bring value across the wide spectrum of the Dell portfolio here as well, which is awesome. Stretching back another decade was the foundation of VxRail, which has driven massive amounts of value to customers over the last 10 years. And maybe I'll be yeah, I'm always honest to our community here. And the easy thing for Dell to do would have just been to continue on with VxRail because that's an amazing product. And if VxRail had just continued on and we could just drive that forward and not change and not bring new products, that would have been the easy button there. But things change and markets change, and we need to bring new solutions to bear that solve today's challenges, not yesterday's challenges. And we'll come on to that in a slide or so there. But all of the engineering effort and all of that time and knowledge and capability and support and domain knowledge and code that went into driving the value of VxRail has existed since time immemorial here and is brought forward in the Dell Private Cloud solutions here as well. Similarly, we brought that engineering investment and in some cases code and in some cases support into our Apex Cloud platforms to extend that value across things like Red Hat OpenShift. And again, that brings into the Dell Automation Platform here. And then from an AI Ops perspective, our Dell AI Ops product, which you may not have heard of, but you will have maybe heard of Cloud IQ, has existed as well for a number of years at this point, for 8 years. I can't count. 8 years at this point, as Cloud IQ evolving to Apex AI Ops, now to Dell AI Ops and Dell AI Ops Infrastructure Observability in particular, which I'm going to talk about and I'm going to show you because I don't think we talk about it enough. And many of you don't even know that you have this included in your pro support contracts, which is crazy to me as well. But we can bring AIOps infrastructure observability under the banner of the automation platform, and then the baby, but the revenue driving baby, the Dell AI Factory, also bring that under the automation platform. And laid out as a timeline like this, it looks like this is iterative. It is not. This is the bringing together of specific technologies under a unified banner here. The automation platform becomes the entry point and the orchestration engine for these specific pieces of technology and these specific outcomes here, rather than having an individual product that you buy to do one thing. You buy the hardware to support the outcome and then deliver that through the automation platform here. And it's a different model here, but delivering in some cases the same value, in some cases even more, and certainly with a level of flexibility that has not been available in the past here as well. So I said that we're focused on a few core areas today as we launch the automation platform and some of these solutions here. The automation platform itself is capable of a wide array more than we have enabled so far. We're in the first couple of weeks of the launch of the automation platform and very focused on solving those three challenges, I think, for obvious reasons that I spoke about earlier. Now, I'm not going to talk about AI solutions or native edge on this call here just now, not because I couldn't, but because, and hopefully I'm not misspeaking here, because this is actually the first in a series of Elevate community sessions, which will cover the automation platform capabilities, future sessions of which will cover AI solutions, native edge, and other pieces as well. So look forward to those there. I'm going to spend my time talking about Dell Private Cloud, what it is, how it helps, and then demo how this actually all comes together through the automation platform here. I said earlier that I was just always going to be honest with our community here, and maybe I'll be devastatingly honest in some of the things I'm going to say next, because honestly, we did have a great thing, and still do have a great thing going with VxRail. I'm not disparaging it. And as I say, the easiest thing in the world would have been if nothing had changed, but markets do change. And that giant boulder of discontent, we'll call it, that Broadcom has thrown into the ocean of IT has spread ripples far and wide and is rocking ships still to this day and causing almost everyone to take stock and evaluate what their future landscape looks like there as well. And if there's one thing we're hearing over and over again, or certainly I'm hearing over and over again, it's that need for flexibility, the ability not necessarily to change course today, but the ability to change course and direction when it makes sense, and for that ability to be a core part of a strategy, not an afterthought or a by the by. And so everything I'm talking about today, this evolved product line, is very, very specifically built based on demand and on need more than anything else. And when we look at that need for flexibility, really interesting that actually a disaggregated infrastructure is actually the great enabler for that flexibility. Because a disaggregated architecture, when you treat the compute and the storage as independent elements there, actually everything becomes a lot simpler in terms of repurposability and changing a personality or changing what platform you're using from one to another. We'll take an example. Let's say I have a six-node VMware cluster with six compute nodes and some PowerStore storage under the covers there. And I want to repurpose three of those nodes to be an OpenShift cluster now. My process for that is relatively straightforward. I can evict nodes from that compute cluster. I can reinstall OpenShift on those, and I can attach new LUNs from my existing storage there. And I've not had to destroy my VMware cluster. I've not had to damage my storage. I've been able to do that in a very regimented, straightforward, and what is actually a very automatable way. And a very easy way. So that becomes possible there. We flash back though to what that would look like in an HCI world if I had a six node VMware vSAN cluster there. What that might look like, it is a very different proposition. There is potentially not necessarily even the ability to remove that many nodes from a cluster. There is the need to destroy some storage or rebuild storage to do that, especially if you're wanting to rebuild the entire cluster there as well. But more importantly, HCI clusters are far more prescriptive in their specifications than a compute node. So actually, if you look at the requirements from vSAN to ODF to S2D to other HCI platforms, there you'll probably need to make some hardware modifications as well, and it's just not a fun experience there. Whereas the experience for repurposing compute nodes and then reattaching storage, it's a very well understood and very straightforward automatable process there as well. But disaggregated is more complex, right? I hear you say. HCI came along to solve the complexity of three tier. So why would we take a step back? Well, we're not taking a step back. HCI is, believe it or not, and it makes me feel old, but it's a decade old or more at this point. And amazingly enough, disaggregated storage has continued to evolve in that time. And with the automation platform, our tooling has evolved to a point where we can deliver, let's call it the HCI simplicity with the disaggregated flexibility. So it's actually not a concern and certainly not a step back here. It's a step forward in terms of capability and flexibility. And there's another layer of flexibility that comes here as well, in decoupling all of the individual elements from each other in this solution, not deploying a singular appliance where everything is tied together, where the life cycle of the storage and the compute and the network and the license are all tied together in one bundle, and they live and die as a whole over the next 3 or 5 years or so. If we decouple all those individual constituent parts from each other into the underlying storage and server and Dell licensing and ecosystem licensing, and they all have their individual life cycles, that opens up a wealth of flexibility. And when you renew things and change things and upgrade things and update and retire things as well across that spectrum of capability there, and then when we layer the automation platform on top, we tie it all cohesively together to give that same experience that came from the appliance-based model, but with much more flexibility around how you operate that moving forward. Um, I think that's enough slides, to be honest. Let's do some demos. Let's do some looking at the platform at this point. And we started off looking at the entry point of the automation platform here, which is the catalog. And the catalog is where you would browse those different offers there. If I click into, for example, Dell Private Cloud here, you will see there are currently two offers in the Dell Private Cloud portfolio. Dell Private Cloud deploying Red Hat OpenShift and Dell Private Cloud deploying VMware. And there are others coming in time as well. We have already announced Dell Private Cloud deploying Nutanix, and there are others adding to this portfolio as well. And I hate talking about licensing, but let's talk about licensing briefly as well, because the licensing model for Dell Private Cloud is also extremely straightforward and extremely flexible here. In days gone by, licensing for these types of solutions was relatively complex, we'll say, in that there were differences in licensing depending on how much storage or how much RAM or how much CPU you had. Sometimes on different generations of servers and so on. There you would see different licensing for the private cloud value within there. From a Dell Private Cloud perspective, there is a singular type of license, which is a server license. So to unlock Dell Private Cloud, for each server that you use to deploy a Dell Private Cloud solution, you need a Dell Private Cloud license. And that is the complexity of it. There is no storage license, there is only a per server license. And that unlocks all the engineering effort that we at Dell put into every ecosystem supported by Dell Private Cloud. Now, today that means OpenShift and VMware, which means that you, if you choose, can automatically repurpose between VMware and OpenShift there, and you get the ability to do that. And after you do that, you will get, well, I'm going to show the value, not talk about the value, but a lot of day two value, not just the initial deployment automation there as well. But it also means that as new offers are added into here over time, as we add that new 10x offer there and then others over time, and this Dell Private Cloud portfolio expands, with no additional licenses from Dell, you unlock automatically all that engineering value across those other ecosystems as well, just by virtue of having that singular Dell Private Cloud license on each server there. So very flexible, order of the day, license that model there as well. And in terms of the types of infrastructure you can do here, I already said that from a server perspective, from a compute node perspective, things are far less prescriptive than on HCI. So we're really looking at, a minimum footprint of 3 nodes here, 3 1U servers as the minimum footprint for a Dell Private Cloud solution for OpenShift or VMware and for others there. And they need to be homogeneous, and that's kind of the size of it. There are 1 or 2 small prerequisites there, minimum numbers of cores, things like that, because those are requirements for VMware or OpenShift. But broadly, it's a very open ecosystem here. Currently on R660, R760, 17G coming in the not too distant future as well there too. When we look into the offer here, what we're actually seeing here is the different infrastructure as code templates, what those are that you get as part of this offer. With the Dell Private Cloud offers, you get access to 4 infrastructure as code templates here, which do 4 specific things. There is one for doing node restore, Dell Private Cloud node restore, which restores your server to its factory defaults. That's fairly straightforward. There is node addition, node removal. If you want to add a new Power server into your OpenShift cluster here, for example, there is an automated blueprint for doing that function. And probably the one with the most complexity is the initial cluster deployment. So a day one operation there for how to actually automatically deploy your OpenShift cluster, which I will show you shortly. But that's the catalog, but our entry point to the automation platform is actually the portal itself. And I said you can deploy the automation platform portal either as SaaS or on premises. I'm going to show you the on premises variant here, just to show there's no SaaS smoke and mirrors here, and to show that the functionality you get is the same on prem as through the SaaS offering here as well. So this is what the Dell Automation Platform looks like when you log in. You'll see that this is running on a local URL here, v1.portal.demo.lab, very customizable, whatever you need that to be within your own environment there. And within here, you can do, well, those things that I spoke about at the start. You can do identity management, infrastructure asset management. You can go to your orchestrator, things like that. From an on-premises identity management perspective, there is a built-in identity store where you can just create users and RBAC roles and things like that, and you can control within that using the built-in user store within the automation platform itself. That is possible. I don't think many people will do that. Most will want to federate with either their existing directory services, so that's any LDAP compliant directory services like Active Directory, or with any OIDC compliant identity store as well, whether it's Okta or Entra or something like that as well. So the ability to map with both cloud-based or LDAP-based user identity stores there. And then, of course, if you do federate, you inherit the security posture of those as well. So if there's MFA applied to your Entra, that applies to the login for your automation platform on premises there as well. So there's your identity management built in there as well. From an asset management perspective, the portal is where you onboard new assets into the experience. And an asset could be a server or a storage device or a native edge device or a plethora, we'll say, of different types of device, but we call them assets here. And the process for onboarding assets is pretty straightforward as well. If I want to add a storage device in here, I go add assets, storage, and I provide the IP address, the PowerStore username here, certificate, and I click on board, and then a few seconds later, my PowerStore device is onboarded into my Dell Automation Platform. If I'm running this on premises, I need to have network routability from the orchestrator to the PowerStore. If I'm running as a SaaS offer, then there's a small on-premises proxy device that runs, which needs to have connectivity to your on-premises device. So we're not saying open up connectivity from your from all your storage and your server devices to our SaaS experience. Here, no, it all routes through a proxy server, and also we store all credentials and secrets and things like that on premises there as well. So they never leave your premises. So secure model for the SaaS offering as well, depending on which model you have there. Onboarding servers is a little bit different. And I want to do an entire session just about onboarding servers because maybe I'm nerdy like that, but there are some very cool things that we've done from a server onboarding perspective, which need to be shouted from the rooftops here. But there are two different ways to onboard your servers. Method number one is provide the service tag, the iDRAC IPv4 address, username and password, and click finish and go. And that server will appear as a manageable device within the Dell Automation Platform here. That is choice and option number one. That is what I would call iDRAC credential-based onboarding. And we'll call that brownfield or existing server or any existing iDRAC 9 compliant server that you have able to be onboarded through that mechanism there. The far more interesting piece is what we call, or what actually is known in the industry as FDO, or FIDO device onboarding. And FDO is an industry spec that was developed by the FIDO Alliance. If you don't know the FIDO Alliance, you do, whether you know it or not, because you'll be using at some point in your life, either through work or personal life, pass keys to log into services. Whether it's logging into your Microsoft account or your M365 account or your work credentials or others, many organizations have moved from passwords to pass keys now, which is removing passwords from the equation and using some form of cryptography to secure and authenticate and authorize you for entry to things there. And that passkey spec was developed and created by the FIDO Alliance. FIDO standing for Fast Identity Online, with their mission being to remove passwords. So mission accomplished. They're doing well with passkeys there. But they also created another spec after this passkey spec called FDO, FIDO device onboarding, which is really for enabling you to have a device that you want to onboard to a portal and you want to do it through cryptography. You don't want passwords. I mean, the method I showed there, you had to enter the iDRAC credentials there. You want to do it in a zero touch, zero trust, provably cryptographically secure manner there. And that's what the FDO spec was there to do. And we've actually driven forward the FDO spec over the last 2.5 years plus through Native Edge. Native Edge has been a massive pioneer in the FDO space here. And the way Native Edge has operated has been when you order a Native Edge device in factory, it becomes an immutable device until it gets turned on and onboarded into its orchestrator on site. It does that through having its BIOS completely locked down. There's a special operating system installed on it, which has the FIDO device onboarding, the secure onboarding client installed on it, so that when you power on that device, it can do its FDO outreach, find its orchestrator on board. It's all very clever, but it needed a special operating system to be installed on that native edge device, which isn't necessarily something everyone wants on every server, for example, that they have coming out to them. So the process we're going through just now, which is what I'm so excited about, is enabling FDO in iDRAC for the Dell PowerEdge portfolio. And we're currently rolling this out, or I've rolled this out to R660 and R760 as a default part of the manufacturing process. That means that when you order a PowerEdge server, without needing to do anything else, it's going to have what we call the secure onboarding client installed on it. So the FDO components installed into iDRAC to enable this secure device onboarding here. You don't have to use it. The choice is yours. You can have it enabled or disabled, but it will be installed. After installation, you also get a secure voucher generated in factory, which goes into your Dell My account. That is part of the cryptographic proof that allows it to onboard into your orchestrator here. So that's one half of the cryptography there. The other half goes into iDRAC secure storage. That device gets shipped to your site. If you've chosen to have that secure onboarding client disabled from factory, it's not going to do anything. It'll just behave like any other PowerEdge device you've always had, no change there. So nothing being forced on you. But if you choose to have that secure onboarding client enabled, either you enable it in iDRAC after it arrives, or you choose to have it enabled from factory, then when you power it on, the iDRAC is going to start reaching out for what we call its rendezvous server. For it'll have a list of DNS entries that it reaches out to try and find something which has ownership of it. And it's going to find a rendezvous server and say, hey, I think you own me. I can prove that I think you own me. Do you own me? Can you prove it? And they'll do a two-way handshake and prove one owns the other and they belong together and they'll come together and appear within the portal in a very secure, zero touch, zero trust way. And from our perspective, there's a vast amount of engineering that went into that. From your perspective, it's you bought a server, it arrived on site, you plugged it in, cabled it in, it needs network connectivity. You push the power button, wait, and it appears within your automation platform portal, whether that's SaaS or on premises there. And that is awesome. And that is a seminal moment for me in the industry, actually. The bringing together of both the bottom layer, the foundation, and the top layer there in a fully automated way so we can start to deliver that value in the middle. I think that is that's something that needs to be shouted from the rooftops more because it is awesome. I spent more time talking about device onboarding there, but hey, I've got the time. So there we go. That's how we get my assets into my Dell Automation Platform there. In this case, server and some storage devices here. And remember, the portal is my view across my Dell Automation Platform estate. The brains of the operation is my orchestrator. So if I want to deploy to do any operations, if I want to deploy anything, to run any infrastructure as code templates, I navigate to my orchestrator to do that. So my orchestrator pass-through credentials. Today, there is a one-to-one mapping between a portal and an orchestrator. So when you deploy the OVA or the Helm chart, you get both the portal and the orchestrator bundled together. In the future, we're looking to decouple that so you can have a one-to-many, so you could have one portal talking to many orchestrators. That's not there yet, but this is why you'll see this architecture here, where there's a different URL for the orchestrator versus the portal. That is to set that up for success into the future there. So almost like it's been planned for intentionally. So as I log into the orchestrator here, there are a few areas I want to walk through and show you. The first here is the infrastructure space here. This is where all the assets associated with this orchestrator will be displayed. So you'll see it's a bit more granular and a bit more managed here than the list that we had in the portal. The portal being the list of everything, the orchestrator showing what is assigned to this orchestrator and what it's being used for. So you'll see a bunch of different categories here across private cloud and edge and storage and AI. External connection, that'll get touched on in the native edge session, and free pool. I'm going to start with the free pool here because the free pool here is the servers which have been onboarded into the automation platform but had nothing done to yet. So these are just standard PowerEdge servers sitting there waiting for an outcome to be associated with them or not. And that's the key here. You can onboard these servers into the automation platform and then choose not to use any of our offers here. You might not want to deploy, a Dell Private Cloud or a native edge or an AI solution on these. You may want to use these as standard PowerEdge servers, but you may also want to bring them into the bounds of the automation platform so that you can do things like maybe look up the hardware information about them, look up their support contracts, look up when that's going to expire. I should also say that everything we're seeing within the automation platform has an associated API, so you can be pulling this out through API as well, and we can run operations through API as well. And I'll show you the API spec towards the end of the session here as well. We can use this for device inventory, great. So you have that as a basic level of functionality there. You can also use Dell AI Ops to do infrastructure observability of these devices as well, which is another value add. And again, in case I didn't say it earlier, I think I did. Dell AI Ops is included in your pro support contract. So it's not another thing to buy. While Dell AI Ops infrastructure observability is included in your pro support contract. So it is just there for you to use as another value add there as well. And you get these benefits kind of out of the box. And that's your free pool. So the free pool is servers that are not being used for a Dell specific outcome, but maybe being used for your specific outcome. Maybe you've installed Oracle Bare Metal or something on them there. They will still show up in the free pool, even though you're using them for something there, but you get some value out of them being within the portal here at any rate, even if it's just from an infrastructure inventory and consolidation perspective there. Under the storage banner here, I have a singular power store here. This could be hundreds of power stores if I want. The value here is bringing common orchestration across not just storage, but also server, because we have automation tools for storage already, right? Actually, Dell AIOps is one of those automation tools here. But we can bring API-driven, infrastructure as code-driven orchestration across both storage and server. Today, from a Power Store perspective, we can do a couple of basic operations, run a health check and run your updates. Not massively interesting, but hopefully shows the foundation that's being laid to bring a lot more operations to that Power Store device, specifically over time there and over the actually pretty immediate future there as well. But it's in the private cloud space that I want to spend the majority of my time just now. What you'll see is that I've got two different clusters deployed here. I've got a VMware cluster and an OpenShift cluster. You'll see that these are just PowerEdge R660s, no special personality here, just normal, well, awesome R660s here, doing their job, being a VMware cluster and an OpenShift cluster. But I want to show you how I got here, how we got to the point where we have a VMware or an OpenShift cluster deployed. And our starting point for that is in our blueprints. So if you remember when we looked in the catalog earlier, the catalog shows the blueprints that you will get as part of that offer. So if I go back to Dell Private Cloud here, Dell Private Cloud deploying Red Hat OpenShift included these blueprints here: deployment, node addition, node removal, node restore. If I go back to my Dell Automation Platform Orchestrator, you will see those OpenShift, restore, remove, add, deploy operations there. So that's where those are. This is not the be all and end all of all the blueprints we make available, by the way. These are just the ones I've loaded for showing Dell Private Cloud. There are dozens of additional blueprints available, which Dell curates and makes available for usage within the automation platform here, which I do not have the time nor even, we'll say, the knowledge to go through in the value they deserve there. So we'll focus back in on the Dell Private Cloud blueprints here just now. And each of these is a declarative infrastructure as code template that Dell builds, curates, and then maintains for the lifetime of the platform to do, in this case, infrastructure operations. So an infrastructure operation might be node addition, node removal, node restore, back to factory defaults, or cluster deployment. And cluster deployment is actually not where I'm going to start. I'm going to start with node restore because it's a simpler one to show the constructs here. If I click into the Dell Private Cloud Node Restore, you can actually delve into this and look through the infrastructure as code template and see the underlying YAML file there. You can see how the Tosca definition is laid out for this here. You can delve into some of the Python scripts that back this as well to see what each of these steps is doing. You can look at all of that. You don't need to. Dell is maintaining all of this for you as part of Dell Private Cloud. All you need to do is actually use it, but you can look at it if you want. You can even look at the topology and the dependency map here to see what the process of this walking through is going to look like. It's going to do clearing the hardware settings before it clears the boss cards, before it cleans up the job queue, before it updates the provisioning state and so on there. So there's a dependency map there that you can look at. You can look through the template, see what's actually happening. But actually all you need to do is come in here, select your node restore, hit deploy, give the deployment a name, choose the node that you want to restore, tell it what you want to do to it. So for example, if I don't tick this box here, it's going to look first and say, is this node being used for a specific outcome? Is this part of a private cloud cluster, for example? And if it is, it's going to say, hey, I'm not going to let you return this to factory default because that could be a destructive operation on that cluster. It could be damaging to the workloads in that cluster. So I'm going to prevent you from doing that unless you choose to tick the box here. With the note, please ensure it's not currently used within the cluster, but we do allow you to do it, but we stop it by default. Similarly, you can reset the BIOS and iDRAC back to their default settings. You may not want to if you're going to use it to move it from one OpenShift cluster to another. It's maybe easier just to maintain those settings because they're going to be the same, or you can reset them. You can erase the operating system. You can wipe the boss cards there. These are all options. You just choose the node, select the options, hit next, go, and that will take it out of the cluster. That will restore the node to its factory defaults and return it back to the free pool there. So that's a very simple, straightforward one there. More complex would be a cluster deployment. So if I select the VMware cluster deployment blueprint here, for example, and I hit deploy, the process is the same. What I have to enter is going to be different. So in order to deploy any VMware cluster, I need to enter some information, right? I need to enter the vCenter server name, the IP address schema, the node names, and so on and so forth. There, all the stuff you need to deploy that. I can either fill that in manually here as a one-time activity, or I can have it stored in a JSON file in a template, and I can just import that in and have that all filled out for me there automatically. So very straightforward and reusable there as well. So my process for starting the deployment is fill in the information, click next, select my storage, click next. It's going to give me a summary of what's going on here. I click deploy, then I sit back and I wait. And I wait for maybe 3 hours or so. And at the end of that, depending on the size of the cluster, I have a workload ready cluster ready to use. Not the bare bones of a cluster or just the OS is installed and some configurations needed. A workload ready cluster ready to use with a whole bunch of day two integrations built in as well, which I will showcase in a second. But before I show that, I want to touch on a bit more of the flexibility enabled here. Because the eagle-eyed of you here may have noticed that when I started this deployment, there was a tick box here which said automate storage configuration, which is a choice. I can either choose to tick this or not. If I tick automate storage configuration, my choice is PowerStore because that's what we have built this end-to-end automation around just now to get that full end-to-end storage and compute and operating system and integration automation coming together as a cohesive whole. We're using PowerStore for that just now, either PowerStore, iSCSI, or Fiber Channel. Doesn't matter, whatever you prefer there. And that's going to give you your best experience, the most automated experience. But we should also recognize that many people have existing storage, which is not PowerStore, or even if you have PowerStore, maybe your storage admin doesn't want to give control of that to another automation platform. That's a valid choice from a storage admin there. So for those use cases, we have a couple of different storage types that we talk about with Dell Private Cloud here. We have what we call platform integrated storage, where that's the PowerStore there, either Fiber Channel or iSCSI, and you can have that fully automated end-to-end experience there by using PowerStore there, and that gives the simplicity and automation there, and that is available. And by the way, both Greenfield and Brownfield is supported, so if you have existing PowerStore, you can build Dell Private Cloud on top of that without needing any new storage there, which is awesome. But if you have other storage, for example, PowerFlex, PowerMax, PowerVault, I'm just reading them, Unity, VMAX, there, then the only thing that's stopping you from using it is whether the ecosystem you want to use supports it. So if VMware supports it, you can use it. If Red Hat supports it, you can use it there. If Nutanix supports it in the future, you can use it there. It's not the same fully automated experience there. I'll show you what it looks like. Instead of ticking automate storage configuration there, it just asks me, in this case, for a data store name. That data store name is where it's going to deploy a management VM as part of the process there, which is why it needs that. And actually, let's have a look through what that full end-to-end deployment process looks like and how it will vary depending on the storage choice you've made there. I can monitor the deployments I'm doing through the Deployments tab here. If I click into a previous VMware cluster deployment that was done, I can actually look at what we call the execution graph of that deployment, which is both a visual representation of that deployment, but also a text-based logging representation of that deployment. So I can go through all the logs in the portal here, or I can export them and then parse them elsewhere. I don't want to look at the logs. I want to look at the execution graph here, which walks through the different steps and stages that it's gone through in doing that deployment. Many, many, many complex steps that we have automated every part of, and you'll see lots of different steps talking about validation and continually validating this as it goes through to make sure as it steps through, things are where they should be and doing what they should be doing to make sure it is in the right state at the end. You get all the firmware updated and brought to the right levels. You get all the iDRAC and BIOS settings done. You get the ESXi imaging done on each individual node. Then it does another validation. Then it's going to provision the cluster itself. After it's provisioned the cluster, if you've chosen to use PowerStore as your storage, it's going to automate the provision of that PowerStore storage. And it's going to map that to your new cluster there. It's going to provision the data stores, and it's going to continue on through its process end to end and give you a workload ready cluster. If you've chosen to use some other storage there, for example, maybe you had a PowerMax already in place there, you want to use that as your storage for this new VMware cluster here, perfectly valid choice. What will happen is it gets the cluster provisioning, then it pauses. So it pauses at that step. It waits for you to manually provision that storage to the new cluster there, create that data store that was named before, come back here, hit resume, and then it continues on and does the rest. And that's another level of flexibility. Yes, we want to give you the most automated experience possible, but there are scenarios where you already have investments. There are other reasons you can't use automation. We still want you to be able to use your investments and your assets there, so you have that ability to use that storage there as part of Dell Private Cloud without it needing to be that Power Store device there as well. The next step is what's called a Dell Private Cloud Manager initialization, and that's the next thing I want to talk about because this is a day one operation that we're looking at here. Day one being the initial deployment. And deployment is what sets you up for success. Day one is important, but I always think that day two is what delivers on success. Everything that comes when a workload is actually running on the cluster, everything that happens when lifecycle management happens, when there's actually skin in the game, when things matter. Not that deployment doesn't matter, but when workloads are running, that's when things really matter. And that's where Dell really made our name with VxRail in making sure the day two experience was as robust as possible by providing continuous validation of VMware updates through the lifetime of that platform there, by providing integrations into vCenter, by providing a unified support experience there as well. And I'm pleased to say that if I go back into my infrastructure here, go to my private cloud, open up my VMware, go to vCenter here, launch my vCenter client. It's important I keep talking here, just to, I guess, pad out the session. But sadly, I can't talk while I type, so there will be a cone of silence for a second. vSphere, and I can't talk because I'll say the password out loud as well. The joke is that the password is actually password, so I did say it out loud. Um, if I go into my vCenter here and I click down into that new cluster that was deployed, this is my three node cluster that was just deployed. You'll see a VM there called Dell Private Cloud. This is why we needed that data store to have somewhere to deploy that Dell Private Cloud VM. And if I click into the cluster, configure Dell Private Cloud, there is an extension here which provides day two integrations and value, which are very consistent with and a lot of the same code as you've been used to with VxRail in the past. So same ability to do a system physical view of your infrastructure here to start to correlate physical alerts, hardware alerts to software alerts and see what's going on from full infrastructure perspective to see information about individual components by clicking on them. And personally, as a person that spent 15 years working in data centers and having people on the phone to me telling me it's the third thing from the right and I think it's that one there, it's disk zero, oh wait, no, disk one, actually being able to have a map in front of you saying what to pull or push or whatever is actually underrated and super important there. So I'm always very happy to see this system physical view there. We also have the ability to do lifecycle management from within here. So full stack lifecycle management capabilities built into the platform here with Dell still doing backend validation of those updates for the full lifetime of the platform there as well. So we have nothing to address here before I install my update, so I can just install that update. Same with the VMware update here. The one difference between this and VxRail is another level of flexibility. Because with VxRail, when VMware released a new update, you needed to wait for Dell to perform validation of that and release an update package before you applied that update. And that was a value add, and that was an important thing because it was what made sure that you were going to get the best experience there. But with this decoupling of licensing from physical infrastructure, we open up some more flexibility in how we can enable that. So we still do all that validation. And if you want to wait for us to do the validation before you apply an update, you can for that extra level of assurance. Or if you want, the day an update is released, you can install it, and it doesn't impact your support stance there. We can't provide the same promises and guarantees as when we've done the validation there, so it's probably best to wait. But if you want to apply an update the day it's released, for example, in the case of a zero-day vulnerability, you can absolutely do that now, which is another level of flexibility enabled here. And that's on the VMware side, which we've done before and should be no surprise there. But if I open up my OpenShift web console here, and they've got a longer password now. I think that's it. Uh, there we go. If I log in here, you'll see that within the OpenShift web console, there is a tab called Dell Private Cloud. And if I click into that, you'll see, well, guess what? The same tabs because we're delivering the same functionality and the same value and the same benefits in the OpenShift ecosystem as we do in the VMware. And this day two value of validation, lifecycle management, support, and serviceability is where I would say the rubber hits the road. Not just around the initial deployment automation, which sets you up for success, but the day two integrations, which deliver on success here. This is where it gets really cool from my perspective here. And it also means that your admins don't have to context shift as they're doing their job here. They don't have to think, oh, I need to install some updates now, so I need to leave OpenShift Web Console and go to this tab here, and then or this other management console, and then I need to make sure that they're not interfering with each other. It's all just there and built in and made easy for you there, and that's a value that we're bringing with the Dell Automation Platform and Dell Private Cloud there as well. And I think broadly, that is what I wanted to show through this session here. So remember, the Dell Automation Platform is the enabler. It is the automation and orchestration layer. It is the portal that you log into where you can see the assets, see the catalog, and then choose to deploy different value add services onto your infrastructure and then repurpose them over time. I didn't show repurposing. Let's do that. We have time. Let's say I wanted to take a node from my free pool here. So I've got these four nodes in my free pool here, and I want to add them into one of my existing private cloud clusters. Maybe I want to add to my Red Hat cluster here. My process for doing that is, again, I go to the blueprints. I choose the OpenShift, in this case, node addition blueprint here. I deploy that. I give it a name, and then I tell it the service tag of that host that I want to add into that cluster. I click next go, and it's going to go through that fully automated path to install the OpenShift operating system. It's going to bring it into the cluster. It's going to install the right CSI, CSM where appropriate to attach it to the storage, to make it Kubernetes aware there, and do everything needed to make that part of that OpenShift cluster there. Similarly, if I wanted to take a node out of my VMware cluster and then add it to the OpenShift, I would do my VMware node removal operation there, take a node out of the cluster in a workload aware way, where if there's going to be disruption to workload, it won't let me. Like it's going to take the nodes below their minimum number of nodes there, it won't let me. If it's a larger cluster, it will let me take the node out. Um, and it will do it in a workload aware way where it evacuates from that node first, puts it into maintenance, takes it out, does it in a very clean way, returns it to factory defaults, and then I can add it into my OpenShift cluster. So remember at the start when I said that the process of repurposing compute nodes is very straightforward and automatable. It is. It is very straightforward and automatable in a way that HCI just is not. Love it though I do. So you'll see on this screen here that yes, there's the automation platform, which is the brains of the operation and the enabler. There's Dell Private Cloud, which I've spoken about here and hopefully helped you understand a bit better. Dell AI Solutions and Native Edge, we'll have future sessions covering those. And then in the not too distant future, maybe in the Q1 timeframe next year, we will open up the ability, first in preview and then generally available, to build your own blueprints. And this is build your own infrastructure as code templates, which can deliver outcomes on your infrastructure that you define across the wide gamut of Dell ISG infrastructure there and probably beyond there as well. So a little bit of a teaser there to whet the appetite. But with that, I think I will stop and pass the mic back.
So thank you, Kenny. I mean, this was fantastic. We've got a little bit of time still left, a couple minutes for some Q&A. So I'll keep an eye on the chat and the Q&A to see if anything comes in there. But that was some fantastic information. And thanks for kind of teeing it up for me that we've got future webinars coming that we're going to make this part of a series, making my making my life pretty easy. So everybody should pay attention for those. If you enjoyed today's content, there will be more. We can get more and more in depth with Kenny as time goes on. Um, so I'll give everybody just a couple more seconds to type anything out. I mean, Kenny, you got any final thoughts in case we don't get any questions?
I could go for another 5 hours, but I shouldn't get started. Um, and it's just very exciting. Again, the flexibility is very exciting to me because there's a lot of potential to be additive to things you already have rather than having to look at new things and then change as time goes on without complexity that's been there in the past. I think that that's exciting. Yeah, Curtis.
Kenny, yes, they're just at the closing here. One question just came up. I was going to respond, but maybe you should just go ahead and answer it live. It says, any details on the Nutanix and Power Store?
Yeah, it's on the roadmap, and I will leave that for our Nutanix session in the future.
Ah, see, that's why I wanted you to answer it.
All right, perfect. Well, with that, we're coming to time. So, Kenny, I want to thank you, Curtis, Josh, everybody for being on here today. Really appreciate everyone's time, everyone's effort for putting this together. Some fantastic content. Like I mentioned, the survey will close or will be out right when you exit this, and then we will also email it. All right, hold on. Kenny, if you're okay with it, we got one more question that just flew in.
Yeah.
Repurposing VMware to Nutanix possible question mark. Not a
Yes.
complete question, but
Yeah, yes.
all right, that's a quick, easy answer. All right, well, with that, we are at time. I'm sure everyone's got other meetings to get to, but we really appreciate you spending some time with us today. This recording will be out soon, so check your emails, and same with the webinar survey. Really appreciate everyone's time.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Cheers.